Rink wide, Palm Springs and Whistler. Presented by Bodog. From sports odds to free casino games, make a play at bodog.net. Wadden and JPat here with you with a special edition of the podcast. As, well, they did it, JPat. He's finally been traded, Bo Horvat. And, you know, as I sit here and reflect on this trade, I have one question. How the hell did we get here? Like the Canucks just traded, in my opinion, the heart and soul of the team, really. Your captain. Like, how did they get to this point? And I know they chose JT Miller, and essentially that was them choosing Horvat, but it's such a head scratcher to me, JPat. He is going to look so completely odd in a New York Islanders jersey. It just, I can't believe we're finally here. I know we've been talking about it for so long, but now that it's happened, it's just weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really weird next Thursday when the Canucks are there. Yeah. But the Islanders play twice before then. They start in Philadelphia out of the break, and then they're at home to Seattle. So Horvat will have a couple of games. I think what's really going to look weird is he's going to have to find a new number because Casey Cizikas wears 53, and unless he's willing to budge, and I can't imagine he would be at this stage of his career, Bo's going to have to find a new NHL number, and that always looks strange, too. I mean, forget the outfit, and the uniform, and the colors. We're going to see Bo Horvat, so I'm kind of curious to see, you know, what his second choice will be for a jersey number. But you're right. I mean, the captain, a leader, a top 10 franchise scorer, a good guy, and, you know, we said to people, like, you know, if you were going to the game, if you were watching the game last Friday, watch Bo closely because that could be it. That might be the last time anybody sees him on home ice. And there was talk about sitting him out and protecting the asset, and they didn't. And, you know, maybe they didn't have an appetite to do it a whole lot longer. Whatever the case, he got through Friday night healthy, unscathed. He had 4 points, a career high, and that's it. So, you know, he goes out on a high, I suppose, in that regard, doing something that he had never done in his NHL career with 4 assists. And, you know, I'm glad for him just because I'm sure all of this has been weighing on him. He hadn't shown it in his on-ice performance, but, you know, there's just been so much talk for so long in the market that there has to be a part of him that's relieved. I mean, maybe he's not thrilled that it's the Islanders. Maybe he wasn't thrilled with the timing because it sounds like his family was down at Disney World ahead of the All-Star weekend. They were getting a little getaway, and then, you know, to have this all happen. But whatever. This is the business side of hockey. It's done. He's a New York Islander now. I guess in my heart of hearts, I was hoping that if he was going, that he was going to go to a team that had legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations instead of the Islanders, who are, you know, below the playoff bar. They can still squeak in, but, you know, that team that went to the Eastern Conference Final a couple of years in a row, they're a far cry from that. They've got incredible goaltending, and they've got pretty solid defense, and that's going to be a massive change for him too. Like, you know, just this run and gun hockey that they played in Vancouver all year that got them nowhere. And now you go to the island, and they are trying to make up ground on teams, and their best way of doing that is to play lockdown hockey. And so that's where I wonder, you know, we've spent so much time. We were talking about projections on the last pod that we did. He's on pace for a 52-goal season. And then he goes to the Islanders, who scored 36 goals in 17 games since Christmas.
So they need a Bo Horvat, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why they made the trade.
Yeah.
But, you know, on top of that, their power play is 3 for 42 since Christmas. It's 7%. And that's where Bo can make a difference. But there's also going to be, you know, he's not going to have Quinn Hughes. He's not going to have JT Miller, and he's not going to have Elias Pettersson as a decoy over on the far side. So totally different set of circumstances. I hope he is productive. Again, you don't get opportunities to take a run at 50 goals in a season very often. And for Bo, he's never had this chance. So I hope that he can find and take that scoring touch with him. But, you know, onto a team that doesn't score much as a whole, that thinks its best path to success is keeping pucks out at the other end. Because I tweeted this out earlier this morning. Their last 3 games before the break, 2-1, 2-0, and 2-1 in overtime. The Canucks haven't played a 2-1 game all season, and the Islanders' last 3 games before the break were all 2-1 or 2-0. So he is, like, you know, he's going to the moon, basically, from what he's, like, it's just a totally different.
That's the first 4 minutes of a Canucks game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, there's the obvious reasons of how he'll help in New York, but is he going to stay in New York? Because you look at the package, and Anthony Beauvillier, Now, it's not Antonio Beauvillier there, Patrik Allvin, Anthony Beauvillier, Aatu Räty or Räty. There's two different ways that they said it in the press conference, regardless. And the first round pick. It's a package. Like, it's a big package. If you're the New York Islanders, 25-year-old first rounder, and then, a first rounder that's 20 years old, and then this year's, which of course it's protected, but it's it's a lot to give up if it's essentially a rental. So that's why I'm sitting there wondering, is he going to sign here in New York? Now, I know Lou Lamoriello has been asked about it, said he wants to see what he can do, try to get it done. But I mean, if you're the Islanders, are you not taking a whole lot of risk here? Like, not knowing for sure that you're going to be able to lock this guy up?
All right. First things first. And I know you've got ski brain or snowboard brain going. Bolivia is a country in South America. Beauvillier is the player that the Vancouver Canucks.
What did I say?
I don't know.
Bolivia. I said Bolivia. But I said Bolivia, didn't I?
You said Beauvillier, but it's Beauvillier. The V comes before all the L's.
Oh. Well, there you go. I'm making fun of Allvin for getting it wrong. I'm getting it wrong.
So okay, what about Aatu? You got your snowboard helmet on too tight, man. That's the problem.
Yes, so. I've actually always been calling him Beauvillier, so maybe we might want to figure this one out. What about Räty? Is it Aatu Räty? What is it?
Aatu Räty.
Okay, there we go. It is a Y.
It's a Y, but I think it's pronounced Ratu. So,
oh boy,
I know. On the surface, like, could the Canucks have done better? I don't know. Clearly, they didn't think so. I wasn't blown away by the return, but I sort of I think I had braced for something like this. I think I had braced to be a little bit underwhelmed. Beauvillier's an NHLer, but he's having a tough go. Now, again, some of that's circumstances and environment. He's got 9 goals and 11 points in 20 games. Horvat's got 31 goals. This guy has 20 points. He's never been a 40-point guy in any of his 6 seasons in the NHL. I had 39 once, so he was right there bumping up against it. He had 21 goals in his second year in the National Hockey League, so he has crested the 20-goal mark. His best scoring rates, though, came in the COVID-shortened season, the no fans in the stands year. He had 15 goals and 28 points in 47 games then, so he was on pace for career highs, but he ran out of games. But no power play points this year, all at even strength, like not a single point on the power play. So you're losing, your most productive guy in Horvat on the power play. I don't know where he slots in. Maybe Makheyev's, fill in on the second power play unit. Maybe there's an opportunity for him. Maybe they give him a look on the top unit. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But like his team, Beauvillier has gone ice cold since Christmas as well. He has 1 goal in 17 games. 1 goal and 3 assists in 17 games. So not much happening there for a guy. He's 25. He's under contract at 4.1 this year and next. It sounds like the Islanders have been trying to move him all year, and I think they saw this as a way to get out from under that portion of the contract at the very least, and then it frees up a little bit of space if they're going to re-sign Horvat. Now, I can't imagine, the reports are that the Canucks didn't grant the Islanders permission to talk contract with Horvat, but I wonder if there isn't some sort, I can't imagine that Lou Lamoriello would roll the dice and give up a first rounder for a player that could be there for 30 games and they may fall short of the playoffs. So, but until the contract's in place, there's no deal there. So there's still a chapter of that contract or of that story to be written as far as what happens with Horvat. As for Aatu Räty, or Ratu, I don't know, we'll get it straight. 2 goals in 12 games this year. And of course, his last NHL goal came against the Canucks back on January the 3rd, because everybody seems to score against them this year. Again, the Islanders don't score much, and yet they came into town and thumped the Canucks pretty good. He only played 6 minutes that night, and he played on the line with Matt Martin and Ross Johnston, and yet they still were able to score. So, there is some upside there. This is a guy that was projected to be a high pick in his draft and continued to slip and fall and slide and dropped considerably, but he's only 20 and he just turned 20. He's late birthday, so he turned 20 in November. Sounds like they're going to send him to Abbotsford right away, and it also sounds like they want him to continue to grow and develop as a center, because there was some talk about whether he was better suited as a winger or in the middle. Sounds like the Canucks want him to be a center. That's what they're suggesting. Allvin said the games that he's watched him, he has seen him and envisions him playing the middle of the ice for the Vancouver Canucks. So Horvat out. I guess it means that JT Miller will slide back to the middle when they reconvene here after the break. And then, they only have 20 skaters on their roster right now because Mikheyev's on injured list. He hasn't been put on LTIR yet, but he's on IR. And then you move out Horvat, you get Beauvillier back, but there are 3 roster spots. So we've talked about that previously. Like, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the call. Because you need some guys in uniform. Somebody's got to play for the Vancouver Canucks, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be Räty, at least not to start right away. So, that's going to be something to watch whenever the Canucks reassemble here ahead of that game in New Jersey next Monday.
Yeah, the Islanders are 2 points out of a playoff spot right now. So, yeah, it is. Again, if this is a rental, that's quite a package to give up, and also no guarantees that they're going to make the playoffs as well, especially with you look at the teams around them. Florida's been Florida. They've just been sort of sputtering all year, but Buffalo's really starting to roll right now too. So it's a risky move for the Islanders, but this isn't an Islanders podcast. So let's focus in on the Canucks. What's the next shoe to fall then, you think, for the Canucks? Because as I look around, I see a lot of expensive wingers right now.
Yeah, no, they're stockpiling wingers. There's no doubt. And as we've said in the past, like, can they do something? I mean, I still think we all expect that Luke Schen's going to go, and then, can they make something else happen ahead of the deadline? I can't imagine that you turn and you flip Beauvillier just because the Islanders were trying to move him all season and didn't sound like they could give him away. So, this is a guy that's maybe played his best hockey in the playoffs. I mean, that is one thing that, if you're trying to sell him, maybe but I think it's more likely this time next year, ahead of next year's deadline. Like, if the Canucks aren't looking to extend him, then he would be a rental at this time next year. And coming to Vancouver, again, he's played in this system. It's the only system he's known. Like, maybe it does unlock his offense. And maybe he can bump his numbers a little bit and become a more attractive at next year's trade deadline. But what's next for the Canucks? Yeah, I mean, look, we spent so much time a year ago talking about potential JT Miller trades. And what did we say? It has to address the right side of their defense. And of course, Miller never got traded. But then we moved on to Horvat, and we said, well, you get this one shot. Like, you've got to set yourself up. You've got to do something, and something that in return, to address the right side of your defense. Now the trade comes and goes, still nothing doing there. So, could they dangle this first rounder that they picked up from the Islanders and use that as trade capital? And it's possible. Maybe they have their eyes on somebody and they want to use the draft pick. If they get through this draft, if they have 2 picks, like if they end up getting the Islanders pick this year and they have 2 picks in the, let's say the top half of the first round, if they don't use one of those on a defenseman, preferably a right shot defenseman, then I'm not convinced that they are ever going to get this right. So, that's sort of the baseline is you might have 2 picks in the first round. You have to take a defenseman, and at that point, I think you'd be getting one of the top defensemen in the draft class. But maybe this is now, we've heard so much about major surgery. So now they have chopped off Bo Horvat. That certainly qualifies as major surgery. But maybe now some of the dominoes do start to fall, and maybe, you pick up a first rounder, maybe you package that with something else to address some of your needs. So, it's hard to know. I mean, there's a month to go ahead of the trade deadline. At the very least, I expect Luke Schenn to be on the move. Not that that's going to net you a massive return, but I do start to think that now the pieces start to move around a little bit here, and maybe we see, hey, maybe Trader Jim gets his confidence back. Like, maybe, I'm back in the game. Let's see how it goes from there. Whatever the case, we know that, the Miller deal did never go down. The Horvat trade has happened, and yet they're still stuck with this defense core that isn't good enough, isn't close to good enough, and it needs major surgery as well. So I hope that that's high on the priority list, whether that is using the first rounder that they acquired from the Islanders, whether that is getting creative somehow, some other way. But this felt like a missed opportunity. I guess if I look at the Horvat return, I said I was braced to be a little bit underwhelmed, but I still thought that, the Islanders have a surplus of defensemen. Like, I thought maybe somehow, some way you could have pried, just a warm body that plays the position that, can stick with you, not just for this year, but for the future as well, but apparently that's not what the Islanders were willing to give up. So takes two to make a deal. Deal is done here. Bo Horvat's an Islander, and the Vancouver Canucks still have a defense core that is a mess and needs a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, we did a little video where I looked at some potential trades for Brock Besser, and one of the names that came up was Scott Mayfield in New York as well. So I thought maybe, yeah, you're right. Maybe a player like that would be coming the other way. I know he's not really a future piece because he's, in his 30s already, but I guess I just sort of answered my own question there, though, because if he's not really a part of the future, then what is the point really of getting that sort of defenseman at this point right now? So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe when it comes to Beauvillier, maybe the next shoe to fall is one of those wingers, going out to try to get you a defenseman in return. Now, when it comes to the actual trade, and I'm looking at Kevin Weeks right now because he is tweeting that he was told another club that was highly interested involved in the Canucks Horvat deal that Vancouver didn't shop the offer and they locked in on the Islanders package. Now, again, you're getting a first rounder. You're essentially, young prospect who, he wasn't a first rounder, but he's got the skills of one and looks like he's going to be a decent piece moving forward, whatever Beauvillier can end up being for the Canucks. But it's a significant package. Does you find it curious that they didn't shop around? And Kevin's usually spot on with his information as well.
Right. And I think that's important to note that he generally isn't just throwing stuff out there. He reports things that either quickly come to fruition or, has it on good authority of the way things have gone. So, yeah, when I see that, my eyebrows are raised. Why wouldn't you shop it? You have nothing to lose. So I am a little surprised. That said, my hunch when I see that is that the Canucks probably felt that they weren't going to be able to secure a better first round pick than the one that the Islanders were willing to play, right? The Islanders clearly had put the first, and make no mistake, the first rounder was the key part for the Vancouver Canucks. And then they built out the trade from there and dollars in and dollars out and made it happen. And they got Aatu and all that kind of stuff. But for the Canucks, I think they locked on to the first round pick, willing to protect it, through 12. And so who knows who these other teams were? Kevin Weeks didn't divulge any of that information. But, if they were talking to Boston or if they were talking to Colorado, there's just nothing that those teams can do to make their first rounder more attractive than the Islanders, just based on where they are in the standings. And so I do wonder if, maybe the Canucks had some discussions with other teams. Yeah, maybe they didn't take the Islanders offer and shop it right back to some of these teams. And, I guess on the surface, that seems like a missed opportunity. Like maybe there is a team that would have jumped a little higher if you said you were ready to pull the trigger on a trade. Whatever the case, they made the deal. It's done now. But I have to think that it all sort of focused around that first rounder and just the idea that, teams that are likely to go on long playoff runs are going to finish at the top of the standings. There's just nothing they can do. Their first rounders are going to be at the back of that first round. And here the Canucks saw an opportunity that, could be in the top half. And if it doesn't happen this year, things happen. You could suffer an injury to, Sorokin or Matt Barzal next year or what, we've seen it. The bottom could potentially fall out on the New York Islanders. They're an aging team, veteran core. They're not thinking that way when they make the trade, but the potential is there that, this thing could be like a sky high pick for the Vancouver Canucks a year from now. And I think that's what intrigued them about the way that this deal set up.
Do you think it had anything to do with Lou Lamoriello? And there was something happening on the draft floor. Regardless, they can deny it all they want.
Right.
When Elliot Friedman is reporting it, something's happening. Right. So, and I'm wondering, if it was, all right, we like this package. We don't want to piss Lou off. Let's go for it. Lock it in. And, Rutherford and Lou would know each other very well for the time in the NHL over the years. So I'm wondering if that had anything to do with it. Just sort of, we like what we got. Let's go with this before, perhaps Lou pulls it. If he hears we're sniffing around elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess there's always that possibility. You're right. We don't know what's sort of said between the two parties, but clearly the Canucks felt that the time was right. Make the deal. And it's funny because I noticed too, a fair bit of chatter on social media yesterday after the deal. People are excited that the trade comes now because there's still a month before the trade deadline. But, the Tankists, they want the bottom to fall out on the Vancouver Canucks. So you've already parked Mikheyev for the season. Now you make this Horvat deal at this All-Star break, 33 games to go. This team is going to take a dip. There's no doubt. And for a lot of people, Like, they are totally fine with that, and there's probably more to come with Luke Shen coming out of the lineup and who knows who else ultimately. But, there were a lot of people that thought, forget about the pieces in return, all that kind of stuff. It's just the timing was right because there's still 33 games to go for the Vancouver Canucks, and they've traded away their leading goal scorer, and they're, one of their best power play guys, and that makes them a weaker team in the here and now. So it's already been a bumpy season, and I guess people better buckle up. Like, I think a lot of people, they understand what's going on. They recognize that, the further the Canucks fall, the better it is for their draft lottery odds. But like, even with Bo Horvat entertaining and scoring the way that he has, ultimately it didn't do a lot to move the needle for the Vancouver Canucks this season. But at least you had the captain to watch on a nightly basis. Like, who knows what the Canucks are going to look like coming out of the break here? Like, there'll be a lot of nights that it's probably fairly unwatchable hockey. And that's why we talked on the last pod about, Pettersson's quest for 100 points and Quinn Hughes pushing it as far as he can go. But what does the power play look like, and how effective can it be without the trigger man in the middle? Somebody will play the position, but I don't think they're going to play it as well as Bo Horvat has for the last bunch of years here as a member of the Vancouver Canucks.
So the plan is for Räty to be down in the AHL playing with Abbotsford. It seems to me like if you're the Canucks organization, I would almost at this point just keep Podkolzin, keep Höglander, keep Räty down there and just let them have a run at it. See if they can win a Calder Cup and form some chemistry, because they're three young guys that are essentially going to be a part of the Canucks' future. Do you agree with that? Like, or would you rather see? I know we've talked about Höglander and Podkolzin coming back, but now that you've added this other, good young prospect who's going to improve the team clearly in Abbotsford, like, maybe it's best to just have those guys go for a run, see if they can win some hardware.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly seem to have something good going in Abbotsford, and you're right. I don't think you want to mess with it an awful lot. I do think that the Canucks, they're on the record that they're going to bring Podkolzin and Höglander back at some point, but I do wonder if the plan is get them back in the NHL for a little bit, but also make sure that they're on the AHL playoff roster so that when the Canucks season is done, you can send them back down. Remember last year, Podkolzin went and he played the 2 games. So, I think there are some ways that you can kind of, make the best of both worlds, that you can still get them back in the National Hockey League at some point for a little while, but maybe it's all done with an eye to, rewarding them for what they've done at Abbotsford, but also let them know that you're going to finish the season back down there. And this is why, because we want this team to go on a playoff run, to have some success and to, see how far they can push it. So in saying that, I do wonder if, and the Canucks have these 3 roster spots available coming out of the All-Star break. Do you bring Phil DiGiuseppe back? A guy like Justin Dowling, who played for the Canucks for a little bit last year. He's a point-a-game guy in the American Hockey League. He's played in the NHL. He's a veteran guy, but he doesn't figure in the future of the Vancouver Canucks. But, maybe you fill your roster with a guy like that for a little while. Although in doing that, you weaken Abbotsford then. So there are some decisions. There's no question. There's some decisions that have to be made here. And, the NHL team should always be the priority, but I don't think you can lose sight of the fact that you've got something happening in Abbotsford and you don't want to disrupt it entirely. So I think this is going to be fascinating to see what management does, like who's going to fill those roster spots, because you can't go out on a road trip with, 18 skaters and 2 goaltenders. Like, you need some reinforcements, you need extra bodies. So somebody's going to get the call from the farm. It's just a question of who and when and, at what stage of their career. I guess some of it depends too on a guy like Will Lockwood, who, has been in the concussion protocol. We're not going to get an update this week, but, is a week off enough time for him to heal up and get ready and get back in the lineup. So he's a little bit of a wild card in all of this as well. But these are the things, like, these are sort of some of the decisions now for the management group moving forward, because they've got these roster spots and they don't have to fill all of them. I mean, they can run with a 21 or a 22 man roster, but you can't go with the bare minimum of skaters, 3 games and 4 nights, 4 and 6 right out of the break. Like, injuries happen. Rick Tockett's still trying to figure out who's who and what's what. And now you throw this curveball at him. So there's just a ton of moving parts around this organization right now. Yeah.
And we should mention as well that there was some retained salary for Bo Horvat, and the Canucks retained some of Bo Horvat's contract as well. in this deal. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they utilize LTIR as well moving forward. You talk about these roster spots. Maybe they can use that to their advantage. Maybe they take back a bad contract that's expiring that helps a deal. We'll have to see. But yep, Bo Horvat is now a New York Islander, and it's going to look weird. And maybe he just flips the number. I just looked; they don't have a 35 right now. So maybe he just flips the number and, or maybe Casey Cizikas, maybe he buys him a Rolex. Hey, Cizikas, here you go. Here's a Rolex. Can you buy 3?
Just your sleuthing work. I think Corey Schneider wears 35 when he gets the call. So,
but he's not.
I know he's down the farm, but
yeah.
Imagine. First of all, those guys traded for each other essentially back in 2013.
Yeah.
And
right.
that's the other funny part in all of this is Lamoriello traded away the pick that became Bo Horvat. When he was still in charge of the Devils, and now Lou Lamoriello finally gets his hooks on Bo Horvat all these years later. But who knows? I don't know. I have no insight as to what Bo would or might do with his number, but I would imagine that we'll find out pretty quickly. Again, he's playing in the All-Star, and that's the other thing too.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about, they won't make the trade before the All-Star game because the league would frown on that. No, apparently not. That doesn't matter. So I think does he still play for the Pacific Division in the All-Star game?
I saw Wish tweeting about it, and apparently the NHL doesn't quite know what to do right now. So I think I don't know though, because then you'd have the Canucks logo on somewhere on the jersey, and if you lose, he doesn't play for them. Take that off. So I don't know what you do. It's a mess, but I don't think Jim Rutherford gives a shit about what the NHL thinks of the All-Star game and all that. They were able to get the deal done. Listen, if you want to get your mortgage redone, or if perhaps you just want to talk to somebody about your mortgage, you should talk to Jason Hominick at jason.mortgage.
Yeah, and be prepared to talk about Bo Horvat first, because Jason loves hockey as much as the next guy, and that's a great in, obviously, if you're unsure, but you just wanted the icebreaker. Well, look, this guy loves hockey, NHL, Western Hockey League. I know he goes to a bunch of Giants games as well. So use that as your in, and then from there, get all the info you need about the best mortgage products for you. Jason Hominick, with 30 years of experience in the biz, he's here to help. He's already saved our listeners, Harrison Price listeners as well, thousands and thousands of dollars, and he can help you save some money as well. Who doesn't want to save money? Exactly. So reach out. That's the first step. Make sure you get the info that you need. I'm sure Patrik Allvin got the info he needed before he made the call and then made the trade. Jason Hominick can help you out with all of your mortgage questions. Reach out to him. Jason.mortgage is his website, and all of his contact information is right there.
I want to reach out to Patrik Allvin and tell him, okay, enough is enough for this week.
Yes,
when I are off, you're down in the sunny sunshine. I'm up and snowing here. This is what we want for this week. You got it out of the way. You did it early. Thank you. No more news. All right. So hopefully we won't be back until next Monday. But again, if there's Canuck news, you know that we'll be talking about it. So barring that, we'll be back on Monday with a pregame, postgame, every game when the Canucks return to the ice. But it's official. Bo Horvat is now a New York Islander, traded yesterday by the Canucks. This has been another edition of the Rink Wide Vancouver podcast, presented by Bodog. For Jeff Patterson, I'm Andrew Wadden. Remember, Rink Wide is the show that always scores.